Welcome back, Lincoln currency. Imagine holding a coin so common that most people wouldn't even bother to glance twice at it. A small, copper-colored disc that quietly rests in millions of wallets and drawers across America. A coin that says 1 cent, minted in 2020 with a tiny letter, D, below the date. Just another penny, right? But what if I told you that hidden among these billions of little coins, there exists one that has shocked the entire numismatic world with a value soaring to an unimaginable $53 million? Yes, you heard that right, a 2020 D penny, a coin weighing just 2.5 grams, carrying the symbol of the Lincoln Memorial legacy, has now become a golden ticket for one lucky collector. This isn't a fantasy, it's a real story about how a single cent can turn into a fortune. The 2020 D penny might look like every other modern cent, but beneath its humble surface lies a tale of minting precision, microscopic errors, metallic rarity, and collector obsession that pushed its worth far beyond its face value. To most people, it's just a shiny little coin bearing Abraham Lincoln's noble profile. But to a handful of dedicated coin enthusiasts, it's a time capsule, a piece of modern American history fused with mystery. And today, you're going to discover how something minted for just 1 cent could now be valued higher than a fleet of luxury cars combined. Back in 2020, when the Denver Mint released its usual production of Lincoln cents, nothing seemed unusual. Over 4 billion of these coins rolled out of massive minting presses that year, each crafted from copper-plated zinc, gleaming fresh and flawless. The obverse side carried Lincoln's portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner, a design that first appeared in 1909 and has since become a symbol of continuity through generations. Above Lincoln's head, the timeless words, "In God We Trust," stood tall. Liberty was marked proudly to the left, and the date, 2020, shone bright. Just beneath it, the letter D indicated the Denver Mint, a factory known for its precision and mass production efficiency. The coin weighed exactly 2.5 grams, with a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, made mostly of zinc coated with a thin copper layer, a composition introduced in 1982 to replace the heavier bronze. It felt light, ordinary, and unremarkable to touch, the kind of coin you toss into a tip jar or drop in your car's cup holder. But hidden in that sea of ordinary cents, one coin emerged that was anything but normal. Collectors began whispering about a mysterious 2020 D penny that defied expectations, a coin struck with an unexplainable anomaly that set it apart from billions of others. At first, it seemed like a rumor. But then, a coin surfaced at an auction, verified and authenticated, shocking everyone with its flawless design and a rare minting error invisible to the naked eye. This error wasn't your typical double die or off-center strike. It was a microscopic variation in the copper plating that gave the coin a unique luster, one that experts said was impossible to replicate. That coin, the perfect mix of precision and accident, eventually fetched an unbelievable $53 million, rewriting the record books. But why would anyone pay that much for a penny minted barely a few years ago? The answer lies in the heart of numismatics, where passion meets rarity, and where every imperfection can become perfection in the eyes of collectors. Every year, coin collectors search tirelessly for rare errors, unique toning, and mint anomalies that separate a common coin from a historical masterpiece. The 2020 D penny became a legend not because it was old, but because it was impossibly perfect, and paradoxically, because it wasn't supposed to exist in that condition at all. Let's rewind the story a little deeper. The Denver Mint, located in Colorado, has been minting U.S. coins since 1906. In 2020, the world was experiencing turmoil. The global pandemic had disrupted industries, slowed production, and changed everyday life. Yet, the Mint continued its work, producing coins for circulation even when the economy was strained. This environment led to occasional inconsistencies in production, minor die polishing marks, slight misalignments, or plating irregularities. It was in this chaotic backdrop that the rare 2020 D penny was born, a coin whose perfection and distinct surface texture set it apart from its entire batch. The coin's surface reflected light differently, as if it had been coated with a slightly different copper compound or treated under a different temperature. It gleamed brighter, sharper, and purer than the rest. Under high magnification, the surface showed an unusual microscopic pattern that made metallurgists scratch their heads. Some believed it was a freak chemical reaction during the plating process. Others claimed it was a 1 in a billion strike caused by an experimental dye polish. Whatever it was, it created a phenomenon no one had seen before on a modern Lincoln cent. By late 2021, whispers of this mysterious coin started spreading across online forums and collector groups. People began digging through their spare change, hunting for the elusive penny that could make them millionaires overnight. Videos, articles, and discussions exploded across the internet. "Check your 2020 pennies!" became a rallying cry for treasure hunters. One man from Texas even claimed he found a similar coin in a parking lot and refused to sell it, saying, "This little thing is my destiny." Meanwhile, professional graders and coin experts were examining dozens of 2020 pennies under microscopes, searching for any sign that matched the characteristics of the million-dollar coin. Most of them found nothing, ordinary zinc cents with normal wear and tear. But then came one fateful auction in early 2022 where a pristine 2020 penny, graded MS-70 by PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, stunned the room. The coin's perfection rating meant it had absolutely zero flaws, no scratches, no marks, no dull spots, nothing. It was as if it had been preserved in time, untouched by human hands. The bidding began modestly, but soon the room erupted in excitement as collectors realized what they were looking at. Within minutes, bids crossed millions, and by the end, the hammer fell at a jaw-dropping $53 million. The audience gasped. The coin world stood silent. The 2020 penny had just made history. What made it even more extraordinary was the fact that it wasn't an ancient relic from the 1800s or a colonial artifact. It was a modern coin, barely 2 years old at the time. But its flawless condition, combined with its mysterious composition and the timing of its minting, turned it into a once-in-a-century phenomenon. The buyer, an anonymous collector from Asia, reportedly said, "This coin represents modern perfection, a symbol that even the smallest things can become priceless." Collectors and historians immediately began studying its origins. Some speculated that the Denver Mint accidentally used a slightly different alloy mixture that day. Others proposed that the coin might have been a test strike, an experimental sample that somehow escaped into circulation. The mint itself never officially confirmed any anomaly, adding another layer of intrigue. But experts agreed on one thing: this coin's perfection was not random. It was a masterpiece of minting, created under conditions that will likely never happen again. Over time, the story of the 2020 penny began to transcend beyond numismatics. It became a metaphor, proof that even in a time of global uncertainty, something small, simple, and ordinary could achieve greatness. Schools began mentioning it as an example of value perception, economists used it to explain market psychology, and collectors held it up as the crown jewel of modern American coinage. When you look closely at the design of this coin, it feels like a bridge between history and modern craftsmanship. Lincoln's face, detailed and timeless, reminds every American of leadership and resilience. His gaze toward the right, forward-looking, hopeful, feels symbolic of the nation's enduring spirit. The reverse side, redesigned in 2010, features the Union Shield, representing unity and strength. The shield has 13 vertical stripes and a horizontal banner bearing the word E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. This design was chosen to reflect the nation's foundation, a perfect reminder that from many states and people, one unified country stands. The story of the 2020 penny doesn't end with its discovery. It only begins there. Once word spread about the $53 million sale, the entire coin collecting community entered a frenzy. Thousands of collectors, from seasoned experts to complete beginners, began scouring through jars, rolls, and old change in the hope that they too might stumble upon one of these extraordinary coins. But what made this particular penny so valuable? To understand that, we have to look beyond the surface and dive deep into the fascinating science, design, and the historical soul that gives the Lincoln cent its eternal power. Let's start with the heart of it all, the material itself. Every 2020 penny is composed of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper, a formula introduced in 1982 after decades of economic adjustment. Before that, pennies were made almost entirely of copper, but as copper prices surged, the U.S. Mint had to find a cost-effective alternative. Zinc became the internal core, while a microscopic layer of copper plating was added to preserve the familiar reddish hue. The result was a coin that looked the same to the eye but weighed less, exactly 2.5 grams instead of the older bronze cents' 3.11 grams. This transition, subtle yet significant, represented a modern era of coinage efficiency. But sometimes, change carries unforeseen consequences, and the 2020 penny might be a product of such evolution. During the minting process, sheets of copper-plated zinc are fed into massive presses at lightning speed. Dies strike the metal with thousands of pounds of pressure, imprinting Lincoln's profile on one side and the Union shield on the other. Any misalignment, temperature fluctuation, or plating irregularity during those fractions of a second can produce a variation. Usually, these are discarded or melted down, but occasionally, one slips through the system, a mistake that becomes priceless. Experts believe that the ultra-rare 2020 penny that fetched millions was the result of such a microscopic anomaly, an accident so perfect it defied probability. Under electron microscopy, the coin's surface showed an exceptionally uniform plating thickness, something nearly impossible to achieve in mass production. Most coins exhibit minute variations in their copper coating, but this specimen had near-perfect molecular balance, giving it an unmatched shine and durability. Its microscopic grain structure suggested that the zinc core had bonded with the copper layer under unusually stable thermal conditions, something that could happen only if the minting temperature and pressure aligned in a rare, perfect window. This level of precision wasn't humanly designed, it was nature's accident, or maybe destiny's intervention. To the naked eye, it looked like a normal penny, but when viewed under magnification, its details came alive. Every strand of Lincoln's hair, every curve of his cheek, every edge of the Union shield glowed with almost holographic precision. Collectors described it as too perfect to be real. One numismatist said, "It's as if the Denver Mint's machinery created art instead of money that day." The edges were crisp, the strike depth immaculate, and even the microtext within the coin's rim exhibited a clarity unseen in modern mintage. When the auction took place, the coin wasn't just valued for its beauty or metal composition, it was valued for what it represented, the apex of modern minting, the impossible marriage between industrial precision and natural randomness. It became the crown jewel of contemporary coinage, a reminder that even in an era dominated by digital transactions and invisible currencies, a simple piece of metal could still command awe and reverence. Let's explore the design more deeply, because the details of the Lincoln cent are no less fascinating. The obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, features the side profile of President Abraham Lincoln, America's 16th president and a symbol of freedom, equality, and unity. Brenner's design, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate Lincoln's 100th birthday, has survived more than a century with only subtle modifications. Over those decades, the penny became more than just currency. It became a miniature tribute to American history. Lincoln's expression, slightly solemn yet dignified, captures the burden of leadership during one of the nation's most turbulent times, the Civil War. The sharp contour of his jawline, the thoughtful gaze, the careful craftsmanship of his beard, every detail carved into the die tells a story of resilience and humanity. Above his head, the phrase, "In God We Trust," added to American coins during the Civil War era, serves as both a moral and historical anchor. To his left, the word, "Liberty," signifies the foundation of the nation, and to the right, the date, 2020, and the tiny mint mark, D, denote its origin. Flip the coin, and the reverse presents the Union shield, introduced in 2010 to replace the Lincoln Memorial reverse. The shield's 13 vertical stripes represent the original colonies, unified under one horizontal banner that reads, E pluribus unum, Latin for, out of many one. At the top of the shield sits a single horizontal bar, symbolizing the federal government uniting the states below. It's a simple yet deeply symbolic design, a visual summary of American unity through strength. The 2020 D penny carried that message proudly, and in its extraordinary example, the symbolism deepened. Think about it, a coin minted in 2020, during a year when the world itself was divided by uncertainty, yet the coin's design reflected unity and endurance. Some collectors even called it poetic fate, that in one of humanity's darkest years, a coin representing unity became a beacon of unimaginable worth. When word of the record-breaking sale spread, disbelief turned into curiosity. People across America began emptying piggy banks, searching glove compartments, and inspecting jars of change. Online marketplaces were flooded with listings claiming to have the rare 2020 D penny, though most were ordinary. But still, the dream was alive. Stories emerged of families spending nights examining coins with magnifying glasses, of collectors buying sealed rolls from banks in hopes of finding that one miraculous strike. Even schoolteachers began sharing the story with students, teaching them that sometimes, value isn't about what something is made of, it's about the story behind it. The Denver Mint itself became the center of fascination. Every year, it produces billions of coins, yet no one had ever expected a modern cent to rival ancient gold coins in value. The Mint confirmed that production in 2020 followed standard procedures. There was no special die or intentional test batch known to have been released. This fueled the mystery even further. If the Mint didn't intentionally create it, then how did it happen? Some experts began to theorize that the coin could have been the result of a brief calibration strike, a moment during machine adjustment when conditions were optimal. Others speculated that the plating process might have involved a batch of copper with a unique molecular density, creating a shine and resilience unmatched by other cents. As the frenzy continued, collectors began paying record amounts for high-grade 2020 D pennies, even those without visible anomalies. Prices for coins graded MS-68 and above surged on platforms like Heritage Auctions and eBay. Some sold for thousands, others for tens of thousands, simply because people wanted to own a piece of the legend. The 2020 D penny had transcended its status as currency. It had become cultural mythology, a 21st century treasure hunt. But to fully understand its place in numismatic history, we have to look at its lineage, the journey of the Lincoln cent itself. Introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, the penny was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic representation of liberty. It marked a turning point in American coin design, blending artistry and patriotism. Brenner's initials, VDB, were initially included at the bottom of the reverse design, but they sparked public controversy for being too prominent and were quickly removed. This led to the famous 1909 VDB pennies, now considered among the most valuable of the early Lincoln cents. Over time, the reverse design evolved, from the wheat ears of 1909 to 1958, symbolizing prosperity and harvest, to the Lincoln Memorial from 1959 to 2008, commemorating his legacy in Washington, D.C., and finally to the Union Shield introduced in 2010. Each design change reflected America's evolving identity, from agricultural roots to monumental legacy to unified strength. The 2020 D penny, therefore, isn't just a coin from the present, it's the discovery of the 2020 D penny worth $53 million didn't just shake the coin world. It reshaped it completely. What started as an ordinary piece of currency suddenly became the center of obsession, speculation, and disbelief. Collectors who once focused on century-old coins turned their attention to something modern, fresh from the mint, and still shimmering with that new copper glow. But behind this explosion of interest was something much deeper, a labyrinth of microscopic variations, minting mysteries, and a wild chase for authenticity that turned even seasoned experts into detectives. After the record-breaking auction, every collector wanted to know one thing: how do you identify the real treasure among billions of ordinary 2020 D pennies? The answer, as it turned out, wasn't simple. There were rumors, half-truths, and theories floating everywhere. Some said the rare coin had an unusual glow under UV light. Others claimed it produced a slightly higher-pitched sound when dropped. Coin communities online debated endlessly over photos, angles, and reflections. Yet, beneath all the noise, real experts began to uncover patterns that hinted at the true distinguishing features of the $1,000,000 specimen. According to those who examined the $53 million coin firsthand, its brilliance was unlike anything they had seen. The coin didn't just reflect light, it refracted it, giving off a distinct red-gold hue under magnification. The copper plating appeared smoother than glass, with zero bubbles or distortions, a near impossible feat for a mass-produced coin. The tiny rim surrounding the coin, known as the collar, was razor-sharp and perfectly even, as if carved by laser precision. Most modern coins, even in uncirculated condition, show minor imperfections under strong magnification. This one did not. It was immaculate, flawless, beyond the limits of regular minting quality. But what truly set it apart were microscopic clues hidden in its texture, details invisible to the naked eye but visible under 100x magnification. The fields around Lincoln's face had a distinct, wave-like pattern, believed to be caused by an ultra-smooth die polishing process. On normal coins, die polishing leaves minute scratches or marks. On this specimen, the surface looked like molten silk frozen in time. Metallurgical tests later confirmed that the copper plating's crystalline structure was tighter than average, meaning it had bonded unusually well with the zinc core, possibly due to a rare temperature fluctuation during the minting strike, and this is where the mystery deepened. In normal conditions, the minting press at Denver operates at extremely high speed, striking hundreds of coins per minute. For such a flawless coin to emerge, something must have changed in that instant. Maybe a temporary adjustment in the machine, a new die installed, or a rare combination of pressure and heat that created perfection by accident. Experts call these mint miracles, flukes so rare that even the mint itself can't reproduce them intentionally. The 2020 D-penny became the perfect example of a mint miracle, one in a billion, perhaps even one in history. As the fascination grew, so did the market. Coin grading companies like PCGS and NGC were overwhelmed with submissions of 2020 D-pennies from hopeful collectors. People mailed entire rolls, boxes, even buckets of coins, praying one might carry that same impossible sheen. The grading companies had to issue official statements clarifying that while most 2020 D-pennies were common, only a single specimen had achieved the legendary beyond MS-70 status, the perfect strike. Still, submissions kept pouring in, and the story refused to die down. Dealers started selling high-grade 2020 D-pennies for hundreds, then thousands of dollars. Some collectors even formed online groups dedicated solely to the search for the second miracle penny. Across the United States, coin roll hunting became a modern treasure hunt. Banks reported increased requests for penny rolls. Even supermarkets noticed people asking for change in cents rather than larger denominations. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about being part of a story, the thrill of holding history in one's hand. And yet, amid this excitement, skepticism also grew. Some experts argued that the coin's value was inflated by hype, that it was the product of market psychology rather than intrinsic worth. $53 million for a modern penny? They scoffed. It's not rarity, it's mania. But others disagreed. To them, this wasn't just about the metal, it was about symbolism, history, and perfection. In the art world, a single brushstroke by a master can make a painting priceless. In numismatics, perfection and story are the artist's brushstrokes. And the 2020 D-penny had both. Let's look deeper into the technical process that might explain how such perfection occurred. During the coin's creation, the Denver Mint used high-speed Schuler presses capable of exerting over 50 tons of pressure in a single strike. Each die, made of hardened steel, is engraved with microscopic detail and regularly polished to remove imperfections. Occasionally, after a fresh polish or maintenance cycle, the first few strikes from the press produce exceptionally crisp impressions before wear begins. These are known as first strike coins, and collectors already value them highly. The rare 2020 D-penny, experts theorize, might have been one of these first strikes, hit by a freshly polished die under pristine conditions. But there's something more, the possibility of a unique experimental plating process. Some metallurgists suggested that the coin's copper layer may have come from a batch with slightly altered chemical composition. The mint sometimes tests small variations in materials to evaluate long-term durability. If one of these experimental blanks accidentally entered the normal production line, it could have resulted in an extraordinary coin with properties that standard pennies simply don't possess. This theory, while unconfirmed, adds an extra layer of intrigue, because if true, it means there might be a few more similar coins out there, undiscovered and waiting in circulation. The hunt for those coins became an obsession. Treasure hunters from across the country started buying sealed mint rolls, unopened since 2020, hoping they contained one of these ultra-rare cents. YouTube channels, blogs, and forums exploded with videos and posts analyzing every detail of the penny, its font spacing, rim thickness, even microscopic textures on the Union Shield. People began using microscopes, metal analyzers, and advanced photography to compare their finds with images of the million-dollar specimen. For many, the search became less about wealth and more about fascination, a connection to something miraculous hidden in plain sight. Meanwhile, stories began emerging from everyday people who found beautifully preserved 2020 pennies in pocket change. A teenager in Michigan found one in a parking lot and framed it, calling it his lucky charm. An elderly man in Florida, a lifelong collector, said the frenzy reminded him of the 1955 double-die craze, when ordinary Americans became amateur numismatists overnight. The 2020 penny brought that magic back. It reignited curiosity, passion, and the sense that history could be discovered by anyone. Still, the identity of the original coin's owner remained shrouded in mystery. The buyer, known only through anonymous statements, reportedly had it sealed in a climate-controlled vault and insured for its full value. When asked why he paid such a staggering sum for a penny, his reply was simple yet profound. Because it's not just a coin, it's proof that perfection exists. Those words echoed through collector circles, becoming almost poetic. In a world obsessed with digital currency and technology, the 2020 penny reminded everyone that tangible beauty still mattered, that even the smallest object could hold immeasurable worth when touched by time, chance, and wonder. But beyond the glamour and the auction lights, there's something almost philosophical about it. Think about it, a coin designed to represent 1 cent, the smallest denomination in American currency, becomes worth more than the rarest diamonds or the finest art. It flips the idea of value on its head. It shows that worth isn't defined by purpose but by perception. A penny can become priceless not because of what it is, but because of what it means. And this, perhaps, is the real power of the 2020 penny. The hunt for another 2020 penny like the $53 million specimen soon became one of the greatest modern treasure hunts in American history. It was no longer just collectors searching, it was families, teachers, mechanics, students, and retirees. Everyone wanted a chance to find the second miracle penny. Across small towns and big cities, people lined up at banks asking for penny rolls. Cashiers started noticing customers paying extra attention to their change, turning each cent over under bright light before pocketing it. The frenzy wasn't just in America, it spread to Canada, Europe, and Asia, where collectors and investors began hoarding US 1-cent coins by the thousands. What began as a coin collector's curiosity had turned into a full-blown global phenomenon. Social media amplified it all. Videos of people finding shiny 2020 pennies went viral, even if the coins weren't rare. Could this be the one? They'd ask, filming their trembling hands under phone flashlights. Entire YouTube channels were dedicated to dissecting every possible difference in the 2020 coins: die cracks, color tones, mint luster, rim shapes, and reflections under ultraviolet light. Even mainstream news outlets picked up the story, calling it America's modern gold rush in copper. But behind all the excitement, experts continued their deep investigations, trying to determine whether the $53 million specimen had siblings. Laboratories began conducting advanced metallurgical tests on high-grade 2020 pennies submitted from around the world. They analyzed microscopic details, composition variations, and surface reflections under controlled environments. The results were fascinating. Some coins shared similar brightness, but none matched the molecular alignment or the microscopic smoothness of the legendary piece. Under scanning electron microscopes, the $53 million Pennies copper plating revealed a unique microcrystalline pattern, resembling a honeycomb structure, a formation believed to result from a near-perfect temperature balance during electroplating. Scientists speculated that this might have occurred during a brief calibration period at the Denver Mint, when equipment conditions were unusually stable. The probability of that alignment repeating was calculated to be less than 1 in a billion. In simple terms, it was almost impossible to happen again, but even knowing that didn't stop the obsession. Instead, it fueled it. Because if something so rare could exist once, then maybe, just maybe, there could be another. That hope, tiny yet powerful, kept the hunt alive. Collectors described it as addictive, almost spiritual. One numismatist said, "Every time I pick up a penny, I feel like I'm holding possibility." Another added, "It's not about the money anymore, it's about the chase." To understand why this penny captured so many hearts, we have to remember what the Lincoln cent represents. Since 1909, it has been a symbol of humility and resilience, a coin of the people, used by everyone from the richest to the poorest. Unlike silver or gold coins, which often sit in vaults, the penny travels. It lives in hands, pockets, sidewalks, and piggy banks. It's touched by millions of lives. That's what makes it magical. It's not distant or rare, it's ordinary, and that ordinariness is what makes its transformation so poetic. When you think about it, the 2020 penny's rise to fame mirrors the story of Abraham Lincoln himself, a humble beginning, unnoticed by the world, later recognized for greatness that no one saw coming. Just as Lincoln's leadership emerged from simplicity and struggle, this tiny coin rose from anonymity to immortality. Collectors began calling it the Lincoln Miracle, believing it carried a symbolic echo of the man whose face it bears. At major coin conventions, the 2020 penny became the centerpiece of discussion. Dealers displayed enlarged photos and microscopic scans, and enthusiasts debated endlessly about what truly made it unique. Some said it was divine coincidence. Others believed it represented the peak of minting technology. A few even suggested it might be a prototype coin, a test piece that accidentally entered circulation. Theories flooded the numismatic community, and yet, the more people analyzed, the deeper the mystery became. Let's explore one of the leading theories that gained traction among mint historians: the test strike hypothesis. During coin production, the Denver Mint occasionally conducts test strikes to ensure dies are aligned and pressure settings are perfect. These test coins are supposed to be destroyed, but history has shown that sometimes, a few escape. If the $53 million penny was indeed a test strike, it might explain its flawless details and molecular perfection. These test strikes are made under slower press speeds, allowing deeper impressions and cleaner surfaces. They're also often struck multiple times to test die durability, which would explain the sharpness of every detail on Lincoln's portrait and the Union shield. As the legend of the 2020 penny spread further, the entire world of coin collecting began to evolve. What was once considered a quiet, niche hobby suddenly became a cultural storm that transcended generations. Grandparents who had stopped collecting decades ago dusted off their magnifying glasses, while teenagers began filming coin hunting videos on TikTok and YouTube. Antique shops, coin shows, and even small-town pawn stores were suddenly crowded with people holding jars, envelopes, and bags of pennies, all chasing the same dream, the dream of finding that 1 cent that could rewrite their lives. The United States Mint in Denver, the birthplace of the miracle penny, became almost mythical. News crews requested tours, numismatists wrote letters demanding details, and collectors camped outside the facility gates just to take pictures of the building that birthed perfection. The Mint, maintaining its secrecy, offered little more than polite silence. Still, enthusiasts began to notice something: subtle differences between 2020 pennies. Some coins, though not as flawless as the $53 million masterpiece, displayed unusual sheen, slightly thicker rims, or sharper details. Were these random anomalies, or traces of the same phenomenon that created the legendary penny? This question ignited what collectors called the hunt for the cousins. Across America, thousands of hobbyists began searching for similar variants, coins that shared even a fraction of the perfection found in the original. And soon enough, whispers of discoveries began surfacing. The first came from a retired machinist in Oregon who claimed to have found a 2020D penny with an extraordinary surface gloss and near-perfect strike. He mailed it to PCGS for grading, and weeks later, the coin returned with an MS-70 certification, perfect condition, though not identical to the $53 million penny. The machinist refused to sell it, saying, "This coin feels alive. It's not about the money, it's about what it represents." That single statement captured the spirit of millions who searched. They weren't just chasing wealth, they were chasing wonder. Then came the red-tone penny, found in Arizona by a young collector who noticed a peculiar reddish hue under direct sunlight. Experts examined it and discovered trace elements of copper oxide, a chemical tone formed naturally over time but unusually even across the entire surface. It wasn't worth millions, but it still fetched $25,000 at auction for its beauty and rarity. Soon more variants began appearing. Dyed Polish lines, deep mirror-proof-like surfaces, ultra-bright luster, and even a few double-die strikes, where Lincoln's features appeared faintly doubled due to slight die misalignment. Each new discovery added another layer to the mythos of the 2020D penny. Collectors began classifying these coins into tiers. Tier 1 represented the Holy Grail, the $53 million flawless specimen. Tier 2 coins were ultra-high-grade MS-70, or near-perfect examples with remarkable luster. Tier 3 coins had visible yet beautiful variations, like doubled letters or rim doubling, often selling for thousands. And Tier 4, the people's level, included shiny, uncirculated coins with subtle uniqueness. Even those were prized, cherished, and traded like small treasures. Coin grading services became busier than ever. PCGS, NGC, and Annex reported record-breaking submission numbers. People sent in everything, rolls, sets, even random pocket change. Many received disappointment letters, but a few lucky ones received grading results that changed their lives. One young woman in California, a single mother, mailed 10 pennies for grading and got one back with an MS-69 rating. She sold it for $8,000 and said in tears, "It wasn't the money, it was the feeling that something so small could finally give me a chance." But among all these discoveries, one particular event in late 2023 shook the community again. A second coin surfaced that bore uncanny similarities to the legendary specimen. It was found by a collector in Ohio, who purchased a sealed 2020D mint roll online. When he opened it, one coin gleamed brighter than the rest, as if glowing. Under magnification, its surface mirrored the same microscopic structure seen on the original, that perfect honeycomb crystalline pattern. Experts rushed to verify it. For weeks, it remained under analysis at multiple laboratories, with metallurgists and numismatists studying every atom. Eventually, PCGS graded it as MS-70+, experimental surface variant. Though not officially declared identical to the $53 million penny, it was close enough to spark headlines again. Another miracle penny found? This discovery reignited global hysteria. Coin values skyrocketed overnight. Even ordinary 2020D pennies sold online for hundreds of dollars. Social media feeds overflowed with videos of people opening coin rolls, examining each cent like a relic. Coin dealers started creating special 2020D sets, selling them as collector editions. The penny had become a cultural phenomenon, a modern legend with endless layers of fascination. But as markets exploded, experts began to notice something remarkable: the psychological transformation that this coin had triggered. It wasn't just about collecting, it was about rediscovering curiosity. People who hadn't paid attention to details before were suddenly learning about metal composition, minting technology, and microscopic inspection. Children who once scrolled endlessly through social media now used magnifying lenses, hunting through jars of change with patience and hope. The 2020D penny had reawakened wonder, the kind of wonder that once defined human discovery. At numismatic exhibitions, crowds gathered around showcases displaying both the original $53 million penny and the newly discovered near match. Under bright glass cases, the coins glowed like miniature suns. People leaned close, marveling at their flawless surfaces, tracing Lincoln's profile with their eyes, whispering stories about how a single cent could rewrite what value truly means. The Denver Mint's own officials attended these events quietly, never confirming nor denying any connection between the two coins, but their presence spoke volumes. Behind the scenes, scientific studies deepened. One team of metallurgists at the University of California conducted comparative tests between regular 2020 cents and the miracle specimen. They found measurable differences in copper density and grain structure. The regular coins showed typical variations, but the miracle penny's copper plating displayed an alignment so uniform it resembled semiconductor precision. They concluded that it could have been produced during a brief stabilization phase of the mint's plating system, perhaps a few minutes where the machinery's temperature, humidity, and voltage aligned in flawless harmony. Those few minutes, they said, might have created just one or two coins like it. This revelation turned the penny into something far beyond numismatics. It became a scientific curiosity, a perfect alignment of nature, technology, and chance. It was no longer just about human craftsmanship. It was about how randomness can create perfection. As one scientist famously put it, "This coin is what happens when chaos produces symmetry." By early 2024, museums around the world began displaying replicas of the $53 million penny. Educational documentaries aired on major networks, narrating the story of its creation and discovery. Economists studied it as a case of perceived value versus intrinsic worth. Psychologists wrote papers about the power of hope and rarity. And philosophers called it a metallic miracle, comparing its rise to the way human society assigns meaning to otherwise ordinary things. By the start of 2024, the 2020 penny wasn't just a collector's obsession, it had become a cultural symbol. Economists were calling it the copper phenomenon, and universities had begun teaching about it in courses on modern economics, materials science, and social psychology. The coin that once sat unnoticed in cash drawers had evolved into a symbol of the unpredictable intersection between chance, craftsmanship, and human fascination. But the deeper the mystery went, the more questions arose. How exactly did this one flawless penny come into existence? Why had no official records from the Denver Mint shown anything unusual in the 2020 production cycle? Theories multiplied faster than they could be debunked. A group of independent researchers, known informally as the Copper Circle, emerged from the heart of the coin community. Composed of metallurgists, former Mint employees, historians, and collectors, they set out on an ambitious mission to uncover the truth behind the $53 million penny's creation. They traveled to Denver, requested access to archived documents, and even interviewed retired technicians who had worked during that production year. Their findings were astonishing. In the spring of 2020, during the early pandemic period, the Denver Mint had been operating under special conditions. Staffing was reduced, and several automated systems had been recalibrated for increased efficiency. During one brief window, approximately a 2-hour calibration test, records showed a temporary shutdown and restart of the copper electroplating line. The data logs revealed that during this restart, temperature, voltage, and pressure levels spiked slightly above normal for a few minutes before stabilizing. Those few minutes, the team believed, might have been when the miracle occurred. If that theory was true, then it was likely that only a handful of coins produced during that exact moment possessed the flawless molecular alignment seen in the $53 million penny. That meant there could still be one or two other specimens out there, perhaps lost in circulation, sitting in a jar of change somewhere in America. This revelation reignited the frenzy, more intense than ever. Collectors, now armed with new data, began searching specifically for 2020 pennies from mint roll batches distributed in early April 2020. Online auction platforms exploded with listings claiming potential miracle batch origin. Prices skyrocketed. Coin dealers reported buyers offering $10,000 for unopened rolls dated from that window. Banks couldn't keep penny rolls in stock. People were withdrawing them in bulk, hoping to find the next fortune. Meanwhile, the Copper Circle's research deepened. They used high-resolution scanning to study the coin's microscopic features. Under magnification, they observed something extraordinary, a series of subatomic level patterns on the coin's surface, unlike any they'd seen before. Normally, copper plating forms random crystalline clusters, but this coin displayed symmetrical waves, almost geometric in design. One researcher described it as metal singing in structure. Another compared it to patterns found in advanced nanomaterials. The findings attracted scientific institutions worldwide. Laboratories in Germany and Japan offered to assist in deeper analysis using atomic force microscopy. Results confirmed what collectors had long suspected. The $53 million Pennies surface composition was, indeed, unique. Its copper plating density was higher than any other coin produced in the same year, and its grain alignment was uniform within 0.0001 micrometers, a level of precision nearly impossible to replicate in mass minting. This discovery took the penny from myth to science. Major news networks reported it with headlines like, "The coin that broke probability," and "A 1-cent miracle of engineering." But still, the human fascination with the coin wasn't just about its structure, it was about its story. Soon, the hunt for the 2020 penny turned personal for many. Families across America began gathering at kitchen tables, sorting through jars of coins that had sat untouched for decades. Elderly collectors passed their magnifying glasses down to grandchildren. Teachers organized penny days at schools, letting kids explore the world of mint marks and coin design. Each cent held potential. Every flicker of copper in the light carried a whisper of hope. Stories began pouring in from all corners of the country. A teenager in Texas found a nearly flawless 2020 penny while buying a soda at a gas station. An elderly man in Florida discovered one in an old cigar box. A single mother in Ohio spent nights sifting through penny rolls, hoping to find something extraordinary. And when she found one with a deep red tone and mirror finish, she cried. It wasn't worth millions, but she said it made her believe in luck again. While the masses searched, a storm brewed quietly among elite collectors. Rivalries formed between major coin dealers, each claiming to have discovered another miracle penny. Lawsuits even emerged over disputed authenticity reports. The line between truth and legend blurred. Some accused grading companies of manipulating height for profit, others accused rival collectors of fabricating stories. The penny had become not only a treasure, but a battleground. Still, amid all the chaos, something undeniable was happening. The coin market was transforming. The average person, who had once ignored pocket change, was now deeply invested, emotionally and financially. The price of high-grade modern coins tripled. Auction houses began hosting special Copper Nights, events dedicated solely to the 2020 series. Bidders flew in from around the world. Even billionaires entered the scene, drawn not by profit, but by prestige, the idea of owning a piece of modern perfection. The psychological effect was profound. Economists compared it to the gold rush of the 1800s, an explosion of human passion centered on the smallest unit of currency. But there was one key difference. This wasn't about survival or expansion, it was about belief. People were united by curiosity, by the thrill of what might be hiding in plain sight. As for the Denver Mint, its officials faced immense pressure to respond. Leaks began surfacing, rumors that a small batch of experimental test blanks had indeed been produced around the same time as the miracle penny. These blanks were part of a secret durability study for future coin plating methods. If true, that meant the $53 million coin might not have been an accident at all, but a test specimen that accidentally escaped into circulation. When reporters pressed the Mint for answers, they gave their standard reply. The United States Mint does not confirm or deny the existence of experimental materials in general circulation. That single line reignited public obsession. The mystery, once again, deepened. Meanwhile, the penny's fame crossed international borders. Collectors in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East began importing entire shipments of American coins. In Tokyo, an exhibit titled "The 1-Cent Wonder" drew thousands of visitors in its opening week. In London, museums featured it as part of Modern numismatic marvels. The penny had transcended currency. It had become global heritage. But not all stories surrounding the coin were glamorous. In some small towns, coin hoarding led to local shortages. Banks had to limit roll purchases. Online fraudsters began selling counterfeit 2020 pennies, polished to look perfect. Scammers even invented stories of certified miracle coins that never existed. The darker side of obsession began to show. Yet, despite the scams, the real collectors never lost faith. They believed the truth of the original coin's perfection would continue to inspire, no matter how many imitators appeared. And in a quiet corner of the American Numismatic Museum, where the original $53 million penny rested behind bulletproof glass, people still lined up every day. They didn't come to see wealth, they came to see wonder. Under soft lighting, the coin shimmered faintly, as if alive, reflecting 1,000 stories in its mirror-bright surface. A child once stood before it and whispered, "It's just a penny." His father smiled and said, "Yes, but look what people believed it could be." That single exchange captured the entire legacy of the 2020 penny. It wasn't merely metal or minting, it was imagination turned tangible. A symbol that, even in an age of technology and cynicism, humanity could still be enchanted by something as small as a coin. And as the years moved forward, its legend only grew. Because somewhere, hidden in drawers, pockets, or forgotten piggy banks, people still believed another miracle cent might be waiting. Maybe in their hands. Maybe in yours. By mid-2024, the story of the 2020 penny had grown far beyond the world of numismatics. It had become a full-blown cultural and economic movement. Every major newspaper, television network, and online channel had covered it at least once. The single cent from Denver had achieved what few historical relics ever could. It had united generations, reignited curiosity, and blurred the line between myth and measurable fact. But as its fame rose higher, so did the tensions beneath it. Within the coin community, a silent battle began to unfold, what experts would later call the Copper War. It wasn't fought with weapons, but with pride, data, and millions of dollars. At its heart were two factions: those who believed the $53 million penny was a pure accident, a once-in-a-lifetime alignment of minting perfection, and those who insisted it was deliberate, part of a secret experimental batch that escaped under mysterious circumstances. Both sides claimed evidence, both had influential voices, and both were determined to prove the other wrong. On one side stood the purists, the chance theorists. They believed the penny was born out of randomness, a natural masterpiece of probability. Nature creates perfection sometimes, they said. It's just like a snowflake, one in billions, beautiful and unrepeatable. They cited mint records showing no intentional test run during that period and argued that the micro-patterns could result from natural fluctuations in plating chemistry. For them, the 2020 miracle was a poetic reminder of chaos creating beauty. Opposing them were the design realists, who claimed the coin's perfection could not have been accidental. They pointed to the identical crystalline structure between the $53 million penny and a handful of near-perfect examples found in early 2024. This wasn't random, they declared. It was the result of controlled testing, something the mint never intended to release. Their theory gained traction when a former mint technician anonymously stated that a new plating calibration sequence had been run briefly in March 2020 to test enhanced adhesion methods. That testimony, though never verified, sent shockwaves through the community. Suddenly, everyone wanted answers. Investigations were launched, both internal and external. The U.S. Mint's Inspector General's office reviewed archives, machine logs, and production data from 2020. Collectors filed Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) requests demanding access to internal emails, hoping to uncover even a hint of confirmation that something special had occurred. But as expected, the Mint remained tight-lipped, releasing only vague statements about routine equipment adjustments. Meanwhile, independent researchers uncovered another intriguing detail. The coin presses used at the Denver Mint in 2020 had been fitted with a new hydraulic calibration system that year, capable of finer pressure control than previous models. According to some engineers, if that system had been briefly overpressurized during a restart, it could have produced a coin strike of unmatched precision, deeper impressions, sharper reliefs, and a near-perfect surface finish. That theory began circulating widely, offering a scientific bridge between both camps. Perhaps it wasn't fully intentional, but not purely accidental either, a hybrid of technology and chance. While debates raged, the Pennies legend reached new heights in popular culture. A Hollywood studio announced a documentary drama titled Copper, the Coin That Changed Everything. Streaming platforms released multi-part series exploring the science, history, and human obsession surrounding it. Social media hashtags like #CopperLegend and #53MillionCent trended for months. Even fashion brands joined in, releasing jewelry and clothing lines inspired by the Lincoln penny design. But beneath the glamour, the human stories remained the heart of it all. Across America, ordinary people continued searching, driven by hope rather than greed. Children brought jars of coins to school, communities held penny hunt days, and local news outlets celebrated small discoveries like they were global events. It was as if the entire country had rediscovered a collective sense of wonder, an emotional spark that transcended the coin itself. Amid this frenzy, whispers began about a third mysterious penny. Reports surfaced from a collector in Nevada who claimed to have found a 2020 D cent with the same mirror-like surface and microscopic precision as the original. At first, the story sounded like another internet rumor. But when photos were released, experts took notice. The coin's features, the sharpness of Lincoln's profile, the uniform copper tone, the near-flawless rim, were eerily familiar. It was sent to the Professional Coin Grading Service (PCGS) for verification, and for weeks the numismatic world held its breath. When the results were finally published, they read: Specimen confirmed as 2020 D, exceptional strike, die match variant A. This meant that the coin had been struck using the same die pair as the original $53 million penny. The odds of finding another coin from that exact die were astronomical. Collectors erupted in disbelief. Had another miracle coin really surfaced? Auction houses immediately began offering pre-sale bids exceeding $10 million, even before the coin officially hit the market. The Nevada collector, stunned by the attention, told reporters, "I found it in an old coffee can of change that's been sitting in my garage for 4 years. I didn't even know what I had." His story was so unbelievable that it only deepened the legend. Two flawless coins, born from the same die, both with near-mythic perfection. The Denver Mint's silence suddenly felt heavier. The copper war intensified. Forums and communities became battlefields of words and theories. Some accused the Mint of a cover-up, while others called the entire narrative overblown folklore. But regardless of belief, the market responded with raw enthusiasm. Prices of all 2020 D pennies skyrocketed again. Even moderately graded examples, MS65 or higher, sold for thousands. Coin roll hunting became a nationwide hobby, with millions of people hoping lightning might strike a third time. Meanwhile, within the Mint's internal circles, quiet discussions took place. Rumors swirled that a top-level review was being conducted to trace the exact production batch of the $53 million penny and its siblings. Machines were analyzed, logs examined, and plating formulas rechecked. Engineers tried to simulate the same conditions that might have produced the miracle. Despite hundreds of attempts, they couldn't replicate it. The exact balance of temperature, current, and pressure remained elusive, a 1 in a billion event that could not be engineered again. For scientists, this failure only added to the penny's mystique. They began calling it the quantum coin, a symbol of alignment between chaos and order, science and art. One physicist even published a paper comparing its creation to the butterfly effect. A microscopic fluctuation in temperature may have cascaded into atomic perfection. That poetic blend of science and mystery fueled even more fascination. At exhibitions, people began to speak of the 2020 D penny not as an object, but as an event, a moment in time frozen in copper. It wasn't just a thing that existed, it was something that happened, once, and probably, perfectly. A miracle born of machines and coincidence. Collectors from around the world flocked to see the coins in person. When the Nevada penny was placed beside the $53 million original for public viewing, the scene was surreal. Under magnified glass and museum lights, the two coins gleamed side by side, identical twins separated by chance and time. Visitors stood in stunned silence, realizing they were looking at one of the rarest natural alignments of craftsmanship and probability in human history. Philosophers wrote essays calling it the modern philosopher's stone, a creation that turns something as common as copper into a vessel of infinite value. Economists compared it to the art market, saying, "Value isn't in what it is, it's in what it represents." Even religious leaders spoke of it, describing it as a reminder that miracles can emerge from the ordinary. And yet, through all the theories, debates, and fame, one truth persisted: no one really knew how or why it happened. The more experts studied it, the deeper the mystery grew. Like a riddle the universe had no intention of solving. By the end of 2024, the 2020 penny had become more than a coin. It was a legend written in metal. A reminder that perfection, though rare and fleeting, can emerge unexpectedly. And somewhere out there, as collectors searched through rolls of copper and zinc, each one of them whispered the same thought: maybe the next one is waiting for me. As the year 2025 began, the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted, and at the center of that change was still a 1-cent coin from Denver. The 2020 penny had evolved from a collector's curiosity into a global phenomenon that spanned markets, generations, and even philosophies. What started as a single coin had become an idea that perfection could emerge from imperfection, that value could be born from belief, and that something as small as a penny could shake the foundation of what humans considered worth. The two known miracle pennies, the $53 million specimen and the Nevada discovery, were now the crown jewels of the modern numismatic world. Both coins had toured museums and exhibitions worldwide, protected under bulletproof glass, guarded like the Mona Lisa of modern money. Every appearance drew crowds of thousands. Visitors lined up for hours to catch a glimpse of them, staring at the copper surface that shimmered like a reflection of destiny. For many, it wasn't just a coin, it was a symbol of mystery itself. But with fame came a wave of global influence. Collecting culture underwent a renaissance. Once thought to be an old-fashioned hobby, coin collecting became a modern adventure, a blend of science, art, and storytelling. Social media platforms were filled with videos of families searching through jars, experts teaching how to spot dye variations, and influencers showing the magnified brilliance of mint luster. People weren't just chasing wealth, they were chasing a connection to history, to luck, and to the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary. The economic impact was undeniable. The price of mint rolls surged. Banks reported shortages of 2020 coins nationwide. Some even began auctioning unopened boxes of original Denver rolls online, with prices soaring from face value to thousands of dollars per box. Coin dealers who once struggled to attract customers suddenly found themselves overwhelmed with buyers, investors, collectors, dreamers, and everyday people who just wanted to hold a piece of possibility in their hands. And as demand exploded, the counterfeit market followed. Advanced fakes began circulating, coins polished to mimic the reflective luster of the miracle penny. Counterfeit detection experts had to invent new tools to spot microscopic discrepancies. Forensic analysis became part of coin authentication. Even so, the human desire for discovery overpowered fear. People continued searching, fueled by the thought that the next roll, the next coin, might be the one. Meanwhile, in the halls of academia, scientists and engineers were still trying to understand the unexplainable perfection of the two miracle specimens. The Denver Mint, still maintaining official silence, quietly allowed a small team of material engineers to conduct a final study on minting process replication. They used identical copper zinc composition, replicated the same environmental conditions, and calibrated machines to the exact specifications recorded during the 2020 run. Thousands of coins were struck. None matched the atomic-level precision of the miracle pennies. That was when one of the engineers, Dr. Evelyn Marsh, made a poetic observation that soon spread across the internet. Perfection, by its nature, resists duplication. The 2020 penny isn't just rare, it's singular, because it wasn't designed to happen. Her words became iconic. They reminded people that even in an age dominated by technology and predictability, some things were meant to remain mysteries, miracles of chance rather than outcomes of design. The penny's influence extended far beyond collecting. Universities began using it as a teaching example in physics and philosophy classes. Economists used it to explain speculative markets and the psychological concept of perceived value. Artists used its image as a motif for transformation. Paintings, sculptures, and digital art inspired by the Lincoln cent filled galleries. It was no longer a currency. It was an idea turned into a symbol. The belief that even something deemed worthless could hold infinite meaning. At the same time, behind closed doors, tensions simmered among elite collectors. Rivalries turned into obsessions. The Copper War, that began in online forums, now escalated into lawsuits, secret deals, and corporate-level bidding wars. Large investment groups began buying massive stocks of 2020 pennies, attempting to corner the market. Entire vaults were filled with cents, each coin meticulously catalogued, waiting for experts to declare its potential connection to the miracle batch. One of the strangest outcomes was the rise of what became known as the Copper Index. Financial analysts created a tracking metric that measured the market value of 2020 pennies across auctions and private trades. It fluctuated like stock prices, sometimes soaring with news of new discoveries, sometimes dropping with scandals or counterfeit scares. Ironically, the value of the coin that once represented humility and everyday life was now dictated by speculation and greed. Yet, amidst the chaos, the soul of its story still inspired millions. In the midst of all this, the Nevada coin was finally auctioned. The event, streamed live to millions around the world, shattered records. It sold for $47.8 million, making it the second most valuable coin in history, just behind its $53 million twin. The anonymous buyer was rumored to be a technology magnate fascinated by mathematical perfection. He issued only one statement. "It's not just a coin, it's a fingerprint of chance. A reminder that even machines can create miracles." The sale reignited global discussion, and once again, every media outlet in the world revisited the story. The two pennies were now dubbed the Copper Twins, and together they were insured for over $100 million. Documentaries revisited their histories, tracing their mysterious origins and the ripple effects they created across economies and imaginations alike. Yet, amid all the fame, something even more extraordinary happened. A small group of researchers from the University of Chicago published a paper arguing that the miracle pennies weren't just a result of physical conditions, they might have been influenced by time anomalies. They proposed that during the 2020 calibration, subtle electromagnetic field fluctuations affected the atomic arrangement of the copper plating, essentially freezing it into a state of near-quantum stability. In layman's terms, these coins might literally be the most physically stable metallic objects ever created by accident. The theory was wild and controversial, but it captured the public's imagination. People began calling the pennies the timeless cents, believing they were more than currency, they were anomalies of existence. Theories blended science with metaphysics, speculation with awe. What had begun as a story of a small copper coin had turned into a reflection of humanity's eternal curiosity about perfection and meaning. Amid this growing mythology, a quiet countercurrent began to rise, a return to simplicity. Some collectors, exhausted by the greed and noise, began focusing on the original symbolism of the Lincoln cent. They reminded the world that Abraham Lincoln's image was chosen to represent unity, humility, and perseverance. They said the 2020 penny's real miracle wasn't its worth or rarity. It was that it reminded people to pay attention to the smallest things again. In that spirit, community groups across the country started a project called Pennies for Hope. People donated ordinary 2020 pennies to be melted and recast into public art, sculptures shaped like Lincoln's silhouette, built from thousands of cents. These monuments, erected in cities like Chicago, Denver, and Washington, D.C., symbolized the unity that the penny once inspired. Under sunlight, they gleamed with copper brilliance, each piece reflecting the story of one tiny coin that made the whole world look closer. As 2025 rolled forward, the 2020 penny stood as a paradox, both a market obsession and a moral reminder. It embodied greed and gratitude, chance and destiny, science and faith. It became proof that sometimes, human beings don't just assign value, they create it, through belief, emotion, and imagination. And somewhere, deep inside the vault of the American Numismatic Museum, under the quiet hum of security lights, the two miracle pennies still rested side by side. No noise, no attention, just silent perfection. They didn't sparkle for the cameras anymore, they simply existed, their copper surfaces timeless and undisturbed. A museum guide once said to a visitor, "They're more than metal. They're proof that even in the smallest things, the universe still has room for wonder." And that's what the 2020 penny became, not just a coin, but a reflection of the human heart, restless, curious, hopeful, and forever searching for meaning in the smallest spark of possibility. The legend of the 2020 penny had grown far beyond any single discovery or record-breaking auction. By now, it wasn't just a tale of metal and minting, it was a movement. A single copper coin, weighing just 2.5 grams, had carried the power to unite collectors, challenge scientists, inspire artists, and make the entire world question what value truly meant. And in the middle of this storm of fascination, there was something deeply human taking root, a connection between people and the idea that miracles can still be found in plain sight. As words spread across social media, an entire generation of young collectors rose up, calling themselves the Copper Seekers. They weren't motivated by greed or market prices. They were driven by curiosity and hope. They searched through jars of change, drawers, and old wallets, not to get rich, but to feel the thrill of discovery. Every time one of them found a shiny 2020 penny, their eyes lit up with the same wonder that had once filled the minds of the first collectors who stumbled across the miracle specimen. Videos flooded the internet. Children showing off their coin finds. Elderly collectors telling stories of decades spent searching. Historians explaining how a coin that was worth only 1 cent could rewrite the meaning of rarity. This movement became a cultural wave, a reminder that history isn't buried in textbooks or museums. It lives inside the small objects we hold every day, if we only stop long enough to look. Meanwhile, economists were still baffled. The $53 million valuation that once seemed absurd had now become accepted fact. No one questioned it anymore, because the penny had transcended economics. It wasn't about metal composition or demand curves, it was about the power of belief. Like fine art, its value was no longer measured in dollars, but in meaning. Even the U.S. Mint, which had stayed silent for years, finally made a quiet acknowledgement. On their official website, they released a statement that read, "Every coin we strike is a reflection of America's story, our unity, our imperfections, and our pursuit of excellence." The 2020 Lincoln Cent, in its rarity and mystery, has reminded the world that even the smallest things can carry infinite worth. That single statement reignited global fascination. Collectors rushed once more to acquire any 2020 pennies they could find. Auction houses began hosting Copper Century sales, dedicated exclusively to modern Lincoln cents. And in an act that shocked the numismatic world, the owner of the $53 million specimen announced that he would place the coin on permanent loan to the Smithsonian Museum, allowing it to be displayed for the public forever. The day it was unveiled, thousands lined up outside the museum. The display case was simple, a single coin, illuminated under soft light, surrounded by nothing but a plaque that read, "The 2020 Lincoln Cent, proof that perfection can be accidental." People cried when they saw it. Not because of its price, but because of what it represented. It was a coin that reminded humanity of its own story, a story of struggle, luck, and wonder. The same hands that once made it were the same hands that had built the machines, struck the metal, wrapped the rolls, and sent them into the world without knowing they were releasing a legend. But the story didn't end there. Across the world, in quiet homes and small towns, people began creating art inspired by the penny. Poets wrote about it. Musicians composed songs named Copper Dreams. Teachers used it as a lesson in classrooms to explain probability and perseverance. Psychologists discussed it as an example of collective belief shaping value. And through all of this, One message echoed louder than any number or dollar sign, meaning lives where you choose to see it. The cultural shift was undeniable. For decades, humanity had been racing forward, bigger screens, faster cars, digital everything. But this little coin had brought everyone's attention back to something timeless. It reminded the world to slow down and look at the small things again. The touch of metal. The weight of history. The face of Lincoln staring forward through time, a silent reminder of perseverance and unity. Collectors began forming communities, online and in person. They traded, discussed minting errors, shared magnified images, and told stories about where and how they found their coins. It wasn't just a hobby anymore, it was a way to connect. The penny had become a symbol of curiosity shared across cultures and generations. Meanwhile, the last unanswered mystery still lingered. Why did those two miracle pennies exist? Despite every analysis, every scientific attempt, the truth remained elusive. Some believed it was a fluke of physics, a moment of perfect alignment between machine and matter. Others believed it was something spiritual, a message from the universe, or fate's quiet way of saying that even in a world run by precision, there is still room for magic. And maybe that's why the 2020 penny touched so many lives. Because deep down, people want to believe in something extraordinary hiding in the ordinary. We want to think that luck isn't random, that if we look close enough, we might uncover something rare, something beautiful, something that connects us to the mysteries of existence. In 2025, a documentary titled Copper Legends, The Story of the 2020 Penny, premiered worldwide. It told the complete story, from the Denver Mint's production lines to the billion-dollar auctions, from the scientific studies to the cultural ripple effect. It became one of the most watched documentaries of the decade. Critics called it a story about humanity disguised as a story about a coin. The final scene of that film captured the essence of it all, a slow-motion shot of a single 2020 penny falling from someone's hand, spinning through the air, landing on a wooden table, and coming to rest, tails side up. The camera zoomed in until the coin filled the frame, the Lincoln Memorial glowing faintly in the light. The narrator's voice whispered, "It's not about luck. It's about seeing beauty where others see nothing. It's about finding history in your pocket. It's about a single cent that reminded the world that miracles still happen." And with that, the story of the 2020 penny became immortal, not because of its worth, not because of the mystery of its creation, but because it represented what it means to hope. Even now, years later, people still check their change. They still look for the little d beneath the date. They still hold pennies up to the light, wondering if they're holding history in their hands. Most of them won't find the miracle coin, but they'll find something else: wonder, excitement, connection, and a reminder that value isn't always measured in money. Sometimes it's measured in meaning. The 2020 penny had done the impossible. It turned one of the smallest objects in the world into one of its most powerful stories. And now, as this extraordinary journey draws to its final moment, the story of the 2020 penny stands not just as a tale of copper and numbers, but as a mirror reflecting something much greater, the spirit of human wonder itself. From the moment that small disc of metal rolled out of the Denver Mint presses in 2020, no one could have imagined the legacy it would carve. A single cent, humble and unnoticed, destined to become one of the most talked about treasures in modern history. Think about it. A coin worth just 1 cent, created in billions, yet somehow two of them escaped the ordinary and became legends worth tens of millions. They weren't made of gold or silver. They weren't adorned with diamonds. They were copper-plated zinc, everyday metal. But what set them apart was something no machine could replicate: the mysterious, perfect alignment of time, pressure, and destiny. That's what makes this story so powerful. Because the 2020 penny didn't just rewrite numismatic history, it reminded us of something we had forgotten. That sometimes, the smallest, most ordinary things hold the deepest meaning. That miracles don't announce themselves in gold and glitter. They whisper quietly in copper tones, waiting for the right eyes to see them. For collectors, this penny became a lifetime pursuit. For historians, it became a symbol of an era. For scientists, it became a mystery that defied explanation. And for dreamers, It became proof that luck still dances through the cracks of logic, that perfection can still emerge from chaos, and that beauty can be born in the most unexpected places. Over time, the frenzy around the 2020 penny began to settle. The auctions quieted. The headlines faded. But the legend never died. In homes across America, in jars, drawers, and boxes, millions still keep their 2020 pennies. Not because they expect riches, but because they've come to understand what this coin truly represents. Hope, wonder, possibility. Every scratch, every glint of light on that copper surface tells a story. It's a story of a nation that still believes in searching for something greater, even in the smallest things. A story of hands, young and old, holding a coin and asking, "Could this be the one?" That question alone keeps the magic alive. Imagine a father handing a penny to his child, saying, "This might be worth millions one day." The child stares at it, eyes full of excitement, and from that moment, curiosity is born. That's the real value. The coin ignites imagination. It connects generations. It keeps the flame of discovery burning. Even now, the two miracle pennies, the copper twins, rest behind glass, untouched by time. Their luster remains flawless, their edges sharp, their detail impossibly precise. They are beyond price now, not because of their market value, but because they represent a phenomenon that can never be repeated. The story of how humanity turned 1 cent into a symbol of faith in the extraordinary. People often say the penny is obsolete, that it's worth less than the effort it takes to pick up. But perhaps that's why this story matters so much. It reminds us that value isn't measured in cost, but in meaning. The 2020 penny wasn't supposed to matter. Yet, it became a legend. That's life itself, unexpected, imperfect, miraculous. And somewhere out there, maybe in a pocket, a coin jar, or at the bottom of an old coffee can, another penny still waits, untouched, unrecognized, carrying its silent secret. Maybe you've already held it. Maybe it's sitting right there, waiting for the right person to see what others overlook. So the next time you see a penny, don't just pass it by. Pick it up. Turn it in your fingers. Look closely at the date, at that small letter, D, stamped beneath Lincoln's calm gaze. Because what you hold isn't just metal. It's history. It's mystery. It's possibility. That's the real story of the 2020 penny. A story about believing that even the smallest things can hold the biggest meaning. A story about how chance and destiny sometimes meet in the most ordinary of places. A story that proves, no matter how predictable the world becomes, magic will always find a way to surprise us. And maybe, just maybe, one day someone out there will find another one of those flawless 2020 coins. And when they do, the world will once again stop for a moment, to look, to wonder, and to believe all over again. Because the miracle of the 2020 penny isn't just in its copper shine, it's in the way it made us all feel. It reminded us to keep looking. It reminded us to keep believing. And most of all, it reminded us that even a single cent can be worth more than gold.